Welcome to the Agency Uplift Podcast, the podcast all about the unique experience of growing a digital agency, the ups, the downs, the challenges, the learnings. I'm your host, Sean Lang, agency owner of over 7 years and co-founder of Social Commerce Club. And today I'm joined by Marcus Taylor, co-founder of Kohde, the design agency for B2B software and tech. Marcus, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me, Sean.
Yeah, really looking forward to our discussion today. I don't think we've ever had any B2B software and tech agencies yet. So your experience that you'll share with us today will probably be a little bit different than we've had. And I love to get all sorts of different perspectives, different lived experiences and journeys. So first off, I'd love to just hear, and I know that your agency has been quite established for a while now. So this is maybe going back a bit, but why did you start an agency?
Well, that's a good question. So we have been around for a while now. And actually, when we started, we were under a different name. So my business partner, Craig Thomas, we started off as Taylor Thomas. And I think going back, really, it was just something I always wanted to do. And, I've told the story to many people many times. And it's kind of like a common theme. It's something clicks in your head. And I remember waking up one morning in my friend's house, staring out the window. It's about 4 a.m. It's the middle of the summer. And I was like, right, I'm going to do this. And I literally went in on the Monday and handed my notice in.
Wow.
And I started off freelancing or sole trading, actually. So I never really freelanced. I always wanted to have my own clients rather than work for another agency. And probably like most kind of agency owners or designers, there's kind of quite a low threshold for boredom. There's kind of glass ceilings that I hit all the time. And my business partner stayed on at that agency. We started, and he kind of then went and did some sole trading, and we kind of combined forces about a year or two later. And, like most people, we just had a 5-word business plan, and that was, let's do some shit together. That was it. Literally it. We were like clueless. And we just did work for anyone and everybody. We're doing sites for photographers, PR kind of companies, energy traders, charities, NGOs, type foundries, just everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And long story short, about 2 or 3 years ago, we decided to change our name. We've got a team. We wanted to take our name off the door, and we wanted to kind of niche down. And we've done a lot of work up to that point in kind of B2B sort of SaaS and software. We do brand, web, and product design. So it's kind of like our natural expertise. We like B2B because it's complicated and complex. And you kind of have to think about multiple buyer personas. And also we'd start to see the kind of common pain points of those types of businesses, whether they're in startup, scale up, or kind of trying to go into mid-market. And that's where we decided to sort of niche down. It has worked for us. And that's kind of where our core expertise lies. But yeah, that's the kind of like the long story short.
Very cool. And it's definitely a somewhat common journey of just starting out and saying, you know what, I don't know how this is going to work. I'm just going to do something. I'm sick of doing stuff for other people. I'm going to do it myself. And then you get in and you say, everything is an opportunity. I'm going to do all of the things. What was that like in the early days, basically when everything was an opportunity?
Do you know what? So when we were talking before the show, so I met up some agency owners yesterday, and there's kind of like that sort of naivety of like 1 or 2 years in is like, it's great, just everything's an opportunity.
Yeah.
And, just the two of us, we rented some desks for some friends like near the West End in London. Our overheads were just next to nothing. And, we were doing websites for 3 or 4 grand, it was ridiculous. But we quickly built up profit in the business. But it's that kind of boredom thing, you quickly go, okay, we need to hire. And then you go into the sort of, you make your first hire, and it's luck if it's a good hire or not, because you've never done it before. You're just kind of
Yep.
like
Hmm.
hiring on instinct and vibe. Um, and to be honest, it's it's looking back on those first few years, I think it's sort of difficult to make mistakes at that point. It's only when you intentionally want to start scaling or intentionally hire that you're kind of looking around and going, I don't know what to do. I've never done this before.
Interesting.
And
Yeah.
it's kind of further into the journey where you start kind of thinking, I need help. And I'm kind of slightly, I'm really envious of like younger agency owners starting now versus when I started, because I'm an old guy now. And there's so many resources out there. Like, you've got kind of loads of agency coaches. There are peer learning groups, Slack channels, all those sorts of things. There's so much content out there to help you out, including ChatGPT. But like when we started, there was nothing. We just kind of like ran on instinct.
Mm.
And you got podcasts. So it's an amazing time to kind of start. The barrier's even lower now. Just a MacBook, a Figma subscription, and some naivety, and you're off to the races.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. One of our earlier episodes, one of my early guests said that so she was working at Amazon and then decided after 10 years that she wanted to do her own thing. She quit her job, bought a laptop, and started an agency. And I thought, isn't that kind of the experience now? That is kind of how it goes now. Um, in terms of talking about, working with anyone and everyone, and they're just, everything being kind of an opportunity. Because in the early days, if you haven't solidified exactly who your agency is, what you do, et cetera, everything is an opportunity because you're kind of testing, right? You're trying to figure out is this my superpower? Is this where I want to go? Is this what I like to do? One concept that struck me early on, and I struggled to incorporate it in, but I eventually did. And I'm curious to hear your take on this. Is the concept of opportunity cost? Because I guess at the start, when it's you and a co-founder, you don't need to necessarily worry as much about the opportunity cost because all costs are borne equally by you and your partner, and that's it. But you really start to feel the effects of opportunity cost if you're trying to bring people on. Then you realize, oh, this person can only do 2 of the 8 things that we actually do. Um, and that kind of also goes hand in hand with like the entrepreneurial drive, which not everybody has. Like 2 founders will have that, and they'll say, we're going to learn all the things we need to do to service all of these opportunities. But not everyone is wired that way, and it can be very hard to find an employee that will roll the punches and expand their scope of expertise to not just the 2 things that they came in on, but the 15 or 16 things that you're doing because of all the different clients you work with. So, um, what has your experience been with the effects of opportunity cost?
That's a good question. So there's a few things to kind of unpack there. So the first thing is kind of like hiring expertise. So I kind of call us specialist generalists, where because we do brand, web, and product design. Agencies tend to zero in on one of those, not all 3 of those, and our agency does all 3s because most agencies are mirrors of the co-founders. So we're kind of like
Mm.
slightly freaky where we've always been able to express brand digitally. So, and then there's, yeah, I would never kind of go, okay, let's just focus on brand or let's just focus on product because of that whole boredom thing, you know. With, agency owners, I think, are like magpies. They like shiny objects.
Very true.
Um, but it does kind of like then make hiring harder because finding specialist generalists is really difficult. And but I think the world is traveling in that direction. agencies are much more nimble now. Like, I come from the kind of generation of, when I kind of like graduated, we were kind of like, my business partner and I were going into the mega agencies in kind of London, and they were just kind of like brand or print or whatever. Um, but yeah, there's sort of like really kind of like little niche agencies out there doing very specialist things. And the other thing, like opportunity cost, is like it took a long time for me to work out how to say no.
That's a huge one.
Yeah. And we're actually very careful about the kind of clients that we work for now. The qualification used to be kind of coming our way. The qualification now goes both ways. Because of our expertise, um, and because of the experience and having worked with certain individuals, we've been very clear about who our ICP is, and that ICP believes in the value and the power of design. He or she runs a design-centric business. We've worked with founders in the past, and they all believe in that, and they trust us, and they value our expertise. So we actively hunt those kinds of clients, because if you're trying to justify your existence, you're losing. So kind of everybody wants to be able to succeed. The client wants us to succeed. We want to succeed. We want to move the needle for their business. So yeah, it took a long time to kind of figure that, how to say no and why to say no. And I think that's a kind of like, that's a symptom of being a kind of jack of all trades in terms of um sort of sector rather than kind of output. I don't really look at what our outputs, like brand, web, and product, as sort of separate things. They're all part of the customer journey to us. But what's important is our kind of experience and expertise, which is in kind of B2B SaaS and software and tech. We kind of understand that kind of the whole buyer journey, whether it's startup or scale up. So, we're kind of, by niching, you're kind of like whittling down the kind of opportunities to say yes or no, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
You said something really great back there. Something about if you're trying to justify your experience, or if you're trying to justify your existence, you're losing. I think that's what you said. And I think that that's
Yeah.
really, really true and really, really interesting. In my experience, running an agency and then also coaching other agency owners, one thing that I've found can really, really happen if you know that you didn't necessarily do a good enough job of qualifying that client, and you feel like they're not fully bought in, is there's definitely the temptation to start throwing more things at them and start adding things out of scope just to sort of justify your existence. Partly to satisfy your own anxiety that, you know what, this client probably isn't actually super happy with what we're doing, and I don't want them to leave, and so I'm going to throw more stuff at them. And then before long, it's been 6 months, and you haven't made a dime of profit on them because you're going far and above beyond scope. That's just one sort of very sneaky, insidious thing that I've noticed is very, very easy to happen. And I think that you hit the nail on the head of trying to get the actual pool of people that you'll work with smaller and smaller, because if those people are already bought in, you don't need to continually justify your existence. It's already justified by your expertise and by the fact that you offer exactly what they're looking for. So I just wanted to comment on that. I thought that was great. Okay, so what are some of the more notable struggles that the agency has had over the years, and sort of learnings that came as a result of those?
Oh, wow. Crikey. I could write a book on those.
Couldn't we all?
Yeah. So, okay, kind of like, so top of mind. So I think, so you're kind of talking to me at an interesting time at the moment, Sean, because um, so I'm on the kind of Gino Wickman EOS train at the moment.
Hmm.
So like most listeners or viewers have probably heard of the book Traction. So if I kind of roll back a few years, there's kind of like a litany of mistakes. And I think the other kind of realization that I've had, not necessarily recently, but in the last few years, is every single problem you have to look in the mirror and point the finger at yourself.
Yep.
So, if you've got bad clients, that's your fault. If you haven't got any work, that's your fault. If you've got a team member that's not pulling their feet, that's your fault, because you either got a bad hiring process, or you haven't trained them, you haven't got SOPs, all those things. So I think the biggest sort of, well, there's two mistakes actually, is not being clear on a vision and a plan. We kind of like start an agency up, we start earning money, things happen, and it happens at us. It's reactive. We're never proactive. And I think, and this would probably be a familiar story as well, we're kind of all owner operators, and we designers typically are sort of, you know, we operate in craft. That's what we love to do. That's what we're born to do. And particularly with me, um, and you make it, it's hard to make the shift from kind of operator to owner. And right now, for me, this is what I'm trying to migrate away from, is like get other tools, rather than being the business, is run the business. And then you have to think about all the different kind of areas of the business. So, there are three core functions. There's kind of sales and marketing, brings business in. There's delivery, someone's got to do it. And then someone's got to send an invoice and collect payment. Luckily for agencies, the finance bit, if you're kind of like 10 or sub 20, finances aren't very complicated. Most of us get involved in operations. That's like our sort of safe space. That's what we're
Yep.
great at. That's where we started it. Whereas like BD, sort of sales and marketing, that's kind of like the icky stuff. Oh, I've got to sell myself. It is the harder part. And, generally, I don't think we've ever cracked that. And that's part of the journey that we're going on. So yeah, those are the sorts of things. I mean, there's lots of kind of like little micro mistakes that you can make. You're not, the sort of kind of peer group that I belong to in the UK. A lot of things I hear is like people are really struggling to make money just because they're not charging enough. You've got to kind of like present yourself as an expert, so charge for it. Um, not having processes, like for everything, like, even down to hiring or project management processes, and not letting go enough tasks. There's a whole litany of things that can always be sort of let go of or improved on. And I think you have to ask yourself, what am I really good at? What do I really enjoy? Um, because you can do everything, and you probably are doing everything, but there are better people out there that can project manage, or possibly even better at you than doing UX design or whatever.
Hmm.
But as the kind of owner founder, the thing that you need to really be focusing on is like, and I think Blair Renz wrote about this years ago, is like you spend sort of a decade fixing client problems, and then one day you'll wake up and go, I need to fix my problem and build this thing for me.
Yep.
Um, so yeah, that's kind of like that. That's the sort of, again, like going back to that light bulb moment. There's various light bulbs that go off, and ultimately it's that kind of hard truth of like all those problems I've created.
All roads lead back to me. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's so true. You said so many things that I would love to comment on, but we'd need hours. Um, where to begin? So I really loved that you brought up the kind of what I think of very loosely as, the the functional business triangle of sales and marketing and delivery or operations and then finance. Because you're very right. Generally, agency founders will kind of sit in one bucket firmly, and it's usually operations. But in some very very personal brand driven agencies, they sit firmly in sales and marketing, and they're the ones that have absolutely no trouble getting tons of clients through the door, but there's absolutely no quality of delivery on the back end. One area that I've seen a lot of agencies in general struggle is actually the finances side. Is just most agencies don't necessarily have any kind of structured way to manage their cash flow, even any way to understand, like, when the business hits this amount of monthly recurring revenue or what have you, I can afford to hire another person, or these clients are profitable, but this one isn't. Like most agencies don't even have like that level of understanding, and I think that we'd like to avoid that, because that takes us away from the dopamine hits of bringing results for clients, which is the operations and delivery side, or also the feeling of getting new clients, which is also dopamine, which is sales and
Mhm.
marketing. Finances is all just kind of like, ugh, I have to do this, ugh. But it's the kind of thing that if you actually have that established for your agency, you can make really really impactful strategic decisions on the operations side and on the sales and marketing side. Otherwise, you're flying blind, and I would guess that the majority of people listening right now, if they are in their first couple of years, maybe even their first 5 years, let's be honest, are completely flying blind and have no idea of the financial state and how they can strategically make decisions based on that. Aside from money comes in, I pay myself, I pay people, and there's some money left over. And I sure hope that that's enough for next month when I got to pay people, when I got to pay people again. Um, I could go on and on about all of that, but we don't have time for all of the knowledge bombs of yours that you just dropped that I'd love to comment on. I would love to hear a little bit about how you are currently acquiring new business. I would assume that since you're definitely a little bit more niche in terms of the clientele that you serve, there's probably a fair amount of referrals happening.
Yeah, and to be honest, that's the way we've operated for a very long time. So I mean, we're kind of unusual where, and this kind of, I mean, we renamed and repositioned a few years ago. So our agency name Code, Kohde, is actually kind of like a loose translation of a Finnish word, which means kind of journey or destination.
Cool.
Um, and and that was kind of born out of the relationships that we have with our clients. So if the company or the business that we work with is a startup, we typically work with the founder. When they move to scale up, we then work with the CMO or VP of marketing. And the relationships that we're looking for are like really long term, because we really, really kind of dig into the business, and by kind of like getting to know the business inside out, that's where we do our best work. And and again, we found that out through kind of working with clients over the long term, and we're like, oh, okay, well, going back to like being able to succeed, we recognize that those relationships yielded the best results for us and the best results for our clients. So again, we actively go, we're not interested in project work. We want long-term relationships because you'll get great work. That might be doubling conversion, adding several million to the bottom line or whatever through acquisition. We do look for those long-term relationships. Um, so you're right. Most of our work does come through referral because, we do get results for our clients and they recommend us to other people. Again, the pivot that we want to make is more kind of proactive kind of customer acquisition. Um, I think right now, like we're kind of in a funny space with customer acquisition because there are like so many tools out there.
Yep.
And, we've got kind of like LinkedIn, got cold outreach, SEOs at all, AI's kind of like bombarding our kind of inboxes. And it just kind of feels like a kind of like chaotic mess. And I imagine most agency owners, and us included, to go, "What's my channel?" There are so many. So we're kind of like focusing on just networking at kind of SaaS and tech events. Um, we've literally just kind of fired the starting gun on more kind of proactive SEO, kind of PPC. And the mistake that we've made in the past is, well, let's just throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. And nothing does, because
Yeah.
you're going to go, let's try PPC. You try it for a month or two and you don't get results. And then you try kind of like networking and then LinkedIn, and you just keep throwing everything. And the thing with these kind of activities is you just have to try them for a long time and measure them, see what works, see what doesn't, and don't give up. But again, I imagine most people's kind of listening or viewing this will go, I don't have time for that. I've got to kind of keep the wheels turning. So again, there's a mistake. So, um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
so yeah, to answer your question, like referrals is kind of like our kind of number one kind of way of acquiring customers.
So that segues into another question I'm wanting to ask you is the fact that you're able to run a strong agency on referrals means that you're doing strong work. What can you maybe walk me through, just high level, um, a notable client win that you're proud of?
There's quite a few. Well, I say there's quite a few. There are a few. So we generally have zero customer churn. So
Wow,
this is one of our kind of like marketing messages, is the way that you'll say goodbye is through exit or acquisition. So most of our
I love
clients
that.
get bought. Um, one client was in an insurtech. They got acquired by a huge carrier, and they attribute several million of their acquisition to brand. So we literally worked with the founder like from day one. I met him and his CTO in a basement in kind of like Finsbury Square in London, and he painted a picture of his vision. I'm like, okay, right, and we literally did everything from that point forward until the point they got acquired. And that founder has set up another business, and is just going through fundraising. And we again created their brand. And then another client who's a ATS, an applicant tracking system. We kind of started with product and then moved over to their kind of marketing site. And one of the metrics that we're proud about is we doubled conversion overnight with their sort of customer acquisition. And they're now kind of a scale up, and we're kind of sort of still working alongside them. So yeah, those are the sorts of things that we're kind of proud of, is that kind of journey that we go on, and then eventually kind of exit. I mean, it's kind of like, it's sad when it happens. Like you create this thing out of a conversation. I mean, that's the thing that gets me out of bed in the morning. It's like you kind of meet the founder, they tell you their vision, and you make it real. And again, that's one of our kind of marketing messages: vision, reality. Um, and you walk alongside that client, and you get them to where they're going, and it's kind of, you go with them and grow with them. So yeah, those are the things that we're proud of. Um, I'd say that's the number one reason of kind of why we still do what we do. Is that kind of, it's just that creating something out of nothing.
That's huge, and the ability to have that kind of impact in the lives of founders, but also in entire companies. That's amazing. It's no wonder that you thrive off of referrals. I mean, that's fantastic. Um, Marcus, this has been a great conversation. You brought so many great ideas to the table. I hope that a lot of our listeners have picked up on all of those golden nuggets. We'll definitely highlight them in the show notes. Where can people find out more about you and Code?
So people can find me on LinkedIn, Marcus Taylor, and you can find our website. It's code.agency. That's KOHDE.agency. I've had a great time as well, Sean. Thank you for having me on. I feel like we could have chatted for hours.
Oh, easily, easily.
But yeah, no, it was good time, good fun. Thank you.
Thanks, Marcus. Take care.
Cheers.